Today, we're getting started in our sourdough series. I've been really excited to do this for a while, and it's going to be a collection of videos to really help you get to not only doing your very first sourdough loaf, but also finding out other stuff to do with it, like what to do with sourdough discard. So you never have to go to the store and buy yeast really ever again. You could do everything at home, maintaining your own sourdough starter. So as you're going through this series, be sure to subscribe and follow along because this video is all about the tools that you're going to need to succeed in making your own first loaf. The next video is going to be all about a sourdough starter, what it is, what makes it thrive, how it works, all of the ins and outs of just basically the sourdough starter to really demystify it and make it easy. Then from the sourdough starter, that's going to lead us into making our very first loaf. But before we do any of this, we really have to know the basic tools that we either need or could get away with not having, even though you might see these things in other videos or other places. Some things aren't totally necessary. Now, the very first thing that you're going to need when it comes to starting your first sourdough is some sort of container to actually house your sourdough starter. When you're choosing between the sourdough starter containments, we like to use just regular mason jars. This is the half-gallon mason jar, and we use this because we make everything from sourdough starter. We do all of our pastries, we do all of our bread. We haven't bought bread from the store period in over 2 years, and it's all because we do everything from scratch from home. That's why we use the giant mason jars. They also have the size below that, and then the standard size mason jar. But one of the biggest things to consider when looking for, if you're gonna go do a mason jar or anything else, is the wide mouth versus the small mouth. You can see that the wide mouth actually just has a straight funnel all the way down, while the regular mason jar has this little lip. It makes it harder to stir everything on the inside of it. So when looking for a container, try to make sure you're finding one with a wide mouth. Now, when it comes to the sourdough starter itself, once it starts growing, you actually should cover it. Flies, gnats, dust, any of that kind of thing can get inside of here, and you don't really want that. But there's a problem, is that if you're not monitoring or familiar with your sourdough, like this one, you can see that this one sat too long and actually kind of spilled over the edges. This could, people say it can explode bottles. I've never seen that happen before, but it can lead to a really highly pressurized glass jar, which could potentially break if you're letting that pressure get too much. I can imagine that if I did use this amount of sourdough inside of here before it actually, inside of this size jar, before it actually pressurized, I can imagine it might actually break this jar. However, what we do to minimize that is our little lid screws on just barely, but it does not go on all the way. So nothing can get inside of here, but gases can still leave, and the actual starter can leak out the edge. If for some reason, this does not happen very often to us, but if for some reason it does, just overproof, it'll come off the edge. And we do that just by using the, this is a number 2 type of plastic, food grade plastic jar lid that goes over it. There's other things like filters or coffee filters, or even an old t-shirt, recommended actual cotton t-shirt, not a synthetic material. And you can put your mason jar ring over that and just kind of put it on that way. Here, I can actually demonstrate it like this. And this will let a lot of that pressure on the inside leave. So it could just fit on like that. But I don't like that. As you can see, it was a little bit more annoying to get on and off. This was way easier. And now that we've got our jar and our lid taken care of, it's now about the measuring device. I highly recommend some sort of measuring device that is accurate enough so that you can weigh out all of your ingredients. Because if you just do stuff based off of half a cup, full cup, there's a lot of times that even just scraping it off. You might get pretty accurate with it, but you get a lot more highly accurate if you just do everything inside of grams, especially on the minute details. Some things might say half a teaspoon of salt. Well, you don't really know unless you have an actual half a teaspoon thing. Sometimes it's not exactly accurate. So highly recommend something that's going to measure in grams and do most of your stuff in grams. It's going to make it a lot more efficient and a lot more consistent between all of your stuff. So definitely something to weigh. But what are you weighing? You're weighing your flour, your water, and your starter. And once you've got all that mixture in together, once you've got all those ingredients in together, you're going to have to actually mix it all in. I prefer something that's metal and thin, and this actually is like a steak hook for hooking steak and flipping it over. But it tends to be one of the best things for actually um, stirring, because it will hook the starter on the inside, and then once you take it out, not all the starter's connected to here, and it's really easy to clean this off. So it just goes in, stir it, easy to go. If you don't have one of those or you can't find one, a wooden spoon works really great, or anything else. My problem with the wooden spoon is that the starter actually gets stuck to the spoon and it's a little bit messier. We do this sometimes if I can't find our little hook, but I prefer this hook method. It's way better, way easier. Highly recommend this for sure. Now the next thing is your mixing bowl. You can see I have two types here. That's because I actually really like, again, this wider mouth mixing bowl over the more shallow mouth. When you put your hands inside to try to mix your dough without taking it outside of the bowl, it's way easier to do than having one of those shallow mouth ones that you might see at most people's homes, or you might have at your own. I really like the wider mouth ones. These work just fine, but the wider mouth. A little bit of a pro tip, you might be able to get one with like a suction cup on the bottom or a heavier bottom, because having a heavier bowl, when you go to pick up your dough and lift it up, a heavy bowl will stay down. If you're going to try to turn your loaf, turn your bread inside of the bowl with one of these light pieces of one of these light bowls, it's going to make it really, you go in, you pick it up, it picks up the whole bowl, you got to hold the bowl down, or you just do it with one hand. And I don't mind doing it this way, but I've seen really heavy bowls, and it makes sense for sourdough because then you do all of the mixing in the bowl. It never has to leave the bowl, and you never even have to touch the bowl. It's just really easy. Now, also a quick note on your measuring device, you want to make sure it's actually big enough to house your bowl, because you're not just using your measurement device for your sourdough starter, you're also using it to make your loaf. Everything's going to be done highly measured to make everything very consistent and easy to remember. You can write it down, you can write your recipe down, put it in a shelf, and you'll always know exactly what your loaf is going to be like, and you'll know how to adjust certain things in the future if you're measuring everything. Now, for the next thing, I don't actually have one of these because I don't need one, but for you, if you don't have a metal table or a marble counters, and you don't want to do everything on your countertops, maybe you don't even have the countertop space, you can get a really large marble. It looks, don't use it as a cutting board, but you can use it, it looks like a cutting board, just like a marble sheet. So that you could do all of your mixing and your dough all on that, and not on the countertops that you might not want to use. I use my stainless steel. It's easy to clean, it's easy to keep sanitized, and we do it all that way. And that being said, we use these scrapers to just clean up our messes afterwards. I don't really use them all the time during the process. I can use them a little bit, but they're more so just to clean up your area and your dough. But definitely the scrapers. Some of the things that you can get, this one I got on Amazon. I actually cut this side so that it had a rounded edge, opposed to both sides being the sharp edge, opposed to both sides having these sharp edges. And that's because it makes it easier, the rounded side, to actually get everything out of inside of the bowl. The pointy side just is a little bit difficult. And with some of those kits that you can get on Amazon, a lot of the times they give you scoring knives. We just use those reusable disposable blades. They work great. You can get a clip to hold these also for your sourdough scoring, but just those very thin, reusable, disposable blades, premium something blade. I'll put a link down to these blades and a lot of the other material here down into the description so that it is a lot easier for you to find. Now, once your bread is done proofing inside of your metal bowl or whatever, you're going to be moving those into your Banneton bowls. And they sit in here and they proof. And as they get, the reason why you use these is because as they get sticky, the material they're made out of and the flour that you put inside of here make it really easy to pull back up your proofed loaf that's ready to go into the oven. And you don't have to have these. Sometimes you could put them inside of a bowl on a linen napkin, whatever, not napkin, but linen rag. You could put those on the inside, making sure it's not too porous of material or a material that isn't going to shed a bunch of fibers into your loaves. You could put those on the inside, but I do highly recommend those Banneton bowls because they make it a lot easier. They'll come with a cover, so you can put your bread loaf either on top of the cover. I think it's another linen material, or you can put it straight in the bowl. We just put it straight in the bowl. I don't even know where the cover is anymore. Now on to what's normally considered the Dutch oven. So we use cast iron and we don't use ceramic. It's your choice. We try to be as non-toxic as we possibly can. Some ceramics, hit and miss whether it's actual real ceramic or what's mixed into it. So we try to do everything cast iron, not ceramic, and not non-stick. The cool thing about this ceramic bowl is that this ceramic top is that it's both a pot on the bottom and a cooktop on the top. So when we cook inside of here, I actually use the top, the saucepan type thing on the bottom, and I'll cook the loaf like this so that it's easier to get out. So once I'm at this point, it's easier to actually get the loaf out instead of trying to get it out this way. And there's room for it to spring up in the tops, like wearing a hat. So if I was cooking inside of this cast iron, that's how I use it. So this type of cast iron pan, very useful for doing bread. But the way that we mostly always cook is not with the actual big pot pan covering it. We just use these pie crust pans, and they cook right inside of here. It actually keeps the crust a little bit softer without getting too crunchy. And I mean, you be the judge. It actually looks just fine. And we prefer it this way because it's easier to get in, get out, get everything done. And everybody in the house, except for me, I like the crunchier crust, but everybody in the house, for sandwich loaves, for everything else, it just makes it way easier to where the crust isn't too like crunchy and hard to eat. So this is our preferred way of doing it. It's our household's preferred way of cooking it. And the people that we give the loaves to or anything else, they tend to like it not so crunchy on the outside also. So literally, it's just a pie pan that's glass and not any other type of metal because, again, I said we try to do as non-toxic as we can. So those aluminum ones, we don't want any of that leaching into the food or anything else. We just do glass or cast iron. In the early stages of bread making, and honestly, even for us, sometimes it's hard to know when the bread is finally finished, especially if you're putting it in the fridge. Sometimes it's colder than other times. There's a bunch of different factors to where a cook time might need to be extended. That's where something with a thermometer that can go directly inside of the bread, checking the temperature, knowing exactly the temperature of these different areas as you're poking inside the bread. This is a huge key to success so that you're not pulling this beautiful loaf out of the oven and then ending up with an uncooked loaf on the inside. That's terrible. and having some sort of poke-in thermometer, it's just a game changer. It makes everything way easier, gets rid of all the guesswork. Now, once it's out of the oven, you want to place it on a cooling rack. Well, why a cooling rack? Well, it's because it's not just for cooling. It's to keep it off of the surface that you're putting it on so that the bottoms of it get adequate amount of airflow so that moisture doesn't collect on the bottom. Because if you let the moisture collect on the bottom, it's going to make this bottom part very soggy, especially if it comes straight out of the oven. So when I made these loaves, I was preparing for this video. I actually left 2 of them on the table and they started to get a little moist at the bottom. So I immediately picked them up, put them on the cooling rack, it fixed it. And both of them are, this one's a little bit moist, more moist than I would want, but it's being fixed with the cooling rack. Now, the final thing that you'll actually want to keep your bread lasting longer without getting too crusty is a bread box or a cake stand. We really like to use the cake stand. It keeps everything off of it and it keeps it moist without the outsides getting too crunchy. It can lead to bringing too much moisture on the inside. So the last thing that we do is we just throw a linen towel in here with it, or we'll have it sit on the linen towel so that the moisture just kind of collects in the towel and not so much back onto the loaf. If I would put it in here without the towel, it has a tendency, not always, it's basically the weather. We live in a very moist area. So with the weather, moisture can be coming from there and coming from the loaf. If I put the loaf in way too warm, this will absolutely get a lot more moisture as it steams out of these things. But a little bit older loaf or a cooler loaf isn't going to have those problems. But this will keep it, especially a cut loaf, being lasting a lot longer and stay fresher longer. But that's it. This is everything that you should need to basically get started. You don't have to have everything in here. You don't have to have the pots. You don't have to have the Banneton bowl. But now you have a good idea of the basic tools that you'll need to succeed with your first loaf. Now, as I said in the beginning, this is a series. The next video, we're going to be going over in depth what a sourdough starter is, how to use it, how it works, and showing you some of the growing process and feeding it. So make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when this next video comes out. And if you're watching after that, it's at the end card. Go watch it. I'm going to help you get your very first loaf up and running, and we're trying to do it the easiest way possible for the working person, the busy person, and not the professional baker, where you can still get a good loaf and make it as easy as you possibly can. So let's hurry over to the next video so we can get you prepared on making your very first loaf.